Hello, good evening, afternoon, whatever time, and welcome to Sunday night breakdown. That's that somewhere in between Christmas and New Year edition. Nobody knows what time of day it is, what day of the week it is.
Yeah,
Dave, before we get underway, and I'm kind of hoping that you've seen this because it'd be a terrible way to break the news otherwise.
yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, I think we ought to mark the passing of Russ Saunders, who I described on Twitter as probably the greatest scorer in the history of British basketball. I've got some numbers that I've just jotted down that I'll just throw out there just to sort of underline why I said that. He scored 1,060 points in 93-94, which is the most points scored in a single season. And for context, that was a 32 game season. And the only other two people to score 1,000 points in a season did it in 36 games. In fact, everybody who scored more than 910 points, the top 12 scoring seasons, did it in 36 games, apart from one other one, which Russ Saunders got 920 in a 28 game season. He had the single season assist record until Fletcher beat him in 22-23. Third most steals in a season. He's second and fourth in terms of points per game in any season. He had 33.1 average one season, 32.8 another season. His career best in the post 1987, the BBL era onwards, is 24.29, the most anybody's ever averaged. He's third most in assists with 6.91. 2.85 is the second most in steals. He has the two highest single game scores in the BBL era, 64 and 55. And he did that within 6 days of each other in January 1998. You will have seen a lot of him, Dave, obviously from his time up in Sunderland. I've given the numbers, but it's sort of just sort of scratching around the edges of what he was as a
Um,
player.
yeah, I mean, I'm probably the person who's probably watched more of Russ playing than anybody alive, to be honest, because I watched every game probably between 90 and 96, which was Sunderland and last year at the Newcastle Comets. And there wasn't many people watching. There was a few, but there wasn't many. And Russ was a magician. Not somebody who um particularly enjoys lionizing the players of the past ahead of the players of the future. I think there's nothing worse than, oh, this guy was the best player I've ever seen. Yeah, he played 24 games or something. Yeah, he's a great, but there's more to playing basketball than just having a few skills. Um, Russ arrived in Birmingham in 1982. He played the vast majority of his career in this country. The fact that he was signed by Kevin Cadle to go and play for Kingston
Mm,
changes it all,
yeah.
because Kevin already had a Bird, and he wanted Russ Saunders with him. He benefited from the introduction of the 3-point line. Um, he was, for those who don't know, Russ was probably 5'10".
Yeah.
He was probably about 10 stone wet through. This was not a physical guy at all. I never spoke a word to him. I have no interaction with him at all. I was kind of at the age being a young fan, kind of early 20s. And so he really was, whilst he's a kind of the godfather of Northeast basketball, professional basketball, I have no personal interaction with him at all. So I don't say this from anything other than an objective viewpoint. He was a magician.
Mm,
He taught me so much just watching him. I mean, by the end of his career, he played for some very good teams. The team that beat Kingston when they didn't, the only time Kingston lost in 3 years, effectively. He played for Sunderland in Europe, and then when Sunderland became definanced, he played for a team which had very little around it, which
mm,
is his kind of 33 point. So everybody's trying to stop him on those teams
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well. When
yeah,
he's scoring 33, he's the guy you got to stop. And I remember learning from his cadence, and learning from the way that he played. By the end, I could tell, even when he had the ball 10 feet inside his own half, when he was looking to pull up and shoot the three, because he had this ability to get to his spot and shoot the three. Curry Lake, we
mm,
didn't set as many screens in those days, but he would just get to a spot, rise up. He didn't have a particularly high release, and knock a shot down. And the other thing I remember about Russ is, about after about 4 years watching him, I remember thinking, I've never seen this guy miss a layup.
Mm,
In warm-ups, in games, whatever. Whenever he got to the rim, he finished. And he wasn't big, he wasn't powerful. He didn't seek contact. It was just the touchy. That's why the best description of him is as a magician, not almost a craftsman of basketball. It was you knew he was there, and he had a swagger and he had an ego, but he carried it very, very lightly.
mm,
There was no chest beating or anything of that nature, and it was just relentless, remorseless, skillful basketball, where he was basically putting a whole team on his shoulders for about 3 or 4 years.
mm,
Um, and when he wasn't, we had that kind of half-assed Hall of Fame thing a couple of years ago with um, the 777 people and Raiden, and when he wasn't part of that, that kind of led me to think, this isn't being done properly, because I don't see how you can have a Hall of Fame without Russ Saunders.
mm.
The guy played for
I
15
think
years.
he would have been there. I think in that first class, I think it's look, order is always an interesting thing, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Well, no, my
He'd
view
have
was
been there.
there
The
should have
other
been
thing
more people brought into it, to put it that way. That's the
that's
point I'm
yeah, I
making.
guess if
Yeah.
we'd kept
I
it
mean,
going, I'm sure he'd have been in there by now. But
well,
the other thing that we didn't uh, I bring it up because this was one of the issues with that Hall of Fame thing was the 1987 line. Obviously, all the numbers I've given out are BBL era
yeah,
stats, and he played from, as you say, 1982 in Birmingham. So he had 5 good years of huge numbers before that as well. So
those that counted.
he probably, I'm sure if I was able to add it all back up, and I might even be able to, he'd be very close to Scantlebury in terms of
Yeah.
total points because he's got about 5,000 in BBL era.
Well, 33 a game for when you're the primary scorer and 7 or 8 assists.
Yeah.
The level of skill that you have to have. These, there's good teams who were playing against. It wasn't, it's rather knocked back. It's rather knocked down as what it was in kind of the early 90s, but they were still good basketball teams,
Mm,
and um and Russ turning up in a Northumbria Centre in Washington, which maybe had 200 people in on a good night at that time, because some of them were on the bones basically, and just producing time and time again with just um he got involved in a couple of instances, but he basically played with class.
mm,
I don't have any memory of him being, he wasn't a cheap shot guy. He took against it. If people cheap shot him, he wasn't very happy about it. But as a basketball player, the best description, he was a magician. And I wouldn't give that description to basically, I mean, Crandall would have been the closest.
mm.
And Crandall was totally different.
Yeah.
Crandall was a magician in a different way, right? Russ was just a magician in his relentlessness and his ability to, despite being 5'10", to pull up on people and shoot the ball from anywhere, or to fake, hesitate, finish at the rim, or to make the right pass. It was a simpler game then.
Mm,
There wasn't the degree of complexity in offense anymore, and he was perfectly set for that kind of just off you go and make a play.
mm,
And he was given freedom to do so. And as I say, the fact that Cadell signed him, and he went to London for that year, that just says, that means this guy was the best around.
yeah. Yeah.
Basically, I'm not sure if we can beat this guy, so we're going to sign him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a great fit, because Bird and Saunders were like both 5'9",
Yeah.
But even so, he still wanted him. That gives you an idea just how good it was. So desperately sad news. I hope at some point um, his contribution will be recognised in some way.
Mm,
I do think we should reinvigorate the Hall of Fame, and I do think there should be more than five players in there. I think there should be 30,
mm.
because I think one per year, or one per year of the last 35 years of basketball, he would be well in there. And
Yeah.
he did,
Yeah.
and it's a shame it couldn't have happened before he passed.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, he was um, he made watching work. He made watching worthwhile.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
he made
Yeah.
watching worth watching that team worthwhile.
Which wasn't easy on
It
some of
wasn't
those
easy,
later
but
day
it made
teams.
it. Yeah, no, it wasn't. But he made it. He always showed up,
Yeah.
and he was great.
Well, let's transition from that very sad news to our usual business of looking back over the action. We'll start on Saturday night. Leicester Riders 75, London Lions 83. And Duca was back dressed for the Leicester but didn't play. Price and Reynolds were back. Mike and McGusty were out with the injured players as well. Lucas Younis kept his spot in the starters. There was barely a shot between them in the first quarter. Lucas Younis hitting threes at one end, Battle and Carey at the other.
Yeah, I listened to Rob's little interview with you beforehand, and my eyes kind of perked up a bit when I heard he mentioned there'd been some form, there's quite a spicy practice or something like that before.
Mm,
Or you know what I mean? Because Christmas is weird, and we'll talk about this with some of the other games coming on. It's just a week since the last game, but it doesn't feel like a week since the
yeah,
last game.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, everything is kind of clustered in the whole, there are so many competing factors for players' attention. That people are all Christmas away from home. Then you've got to get practice facilities, you've got to get the gym open at the right time. You've got to make sure you've got to try and kind of maintain a focus on the players, a regular season focus at a time when, they're really not necessarily going to be the most focused, that there are going to be distractions. And in our way, in Fab's day, that was just basically getting them in practice on Boxing Day and abusing them, and, and waiting,
Did you get
waiting.
the weighing scale out like Pep
No, never got
Guardiola
that
did?
far. Never got that far. But basically waiting for Bridgie will tell you that you did not want to make the first minor mistake in Boxing Day practice,
Yeah.
because that would be an excuse just to absolutely go off on the whole team about everything. The logic being that you want to try and prepare better than the opposition. You want to
Mm,
be sharper to the game. You want to have the mindsets kind of, you want to have Christmas almost disallowed,
mm,
in the back mirror. And so there's that. There's a ton of, so what, that kind of thing. And obviously Leicester coming off a loss whereby, I think it was a pretty dispiriting loss at Newcastle, because I think, they didn't think they should have given up 95 points in that game to,
mm,
to the Eagles. Um, Listening to Rob's interview afterwards, it was pretty reflective
mm,
of that game. And I think they realised that if we play like this the rest of the year, we're not going anywhere
mm,
basically. So there was and obviously you got London, you got a big crowd, so you've got a reason to be up for the game, and having as I say, quote whatever he said about the practice. I don't know what the exact adjective was, but he said something which made me think, okay, these guys are going to be tuned in.
mm,
And so much of BBL SLB coaching um, is about dealing with the emotional highs and lows of your players.
mm,
Not just the X's and O's, but understanding the rhythm and the cadence of the season, and making sure that they're up at the right time and play at the right time. Um, Against that, really impressed with Sabonis in this game, because um, and obviously he's a very different coach to Schmidt or Bozic who've come before. And I get that he's different. And there's not to say that Schmidt and Bozic weren't right, but there was absolutely no doubt how invested Sabonis was in this game.
yeah, yeah.
At the end of the day, yeah, there's a bit of rivalry. I get that. It's going back years. I get that. But let's just 5-7.
Mm,
It's another league game. It's not a Euro Cup game. Well, of course, London, of course, coming off a loss.
mm. Well, they did beat Caledonia out in
Yeah, but
that
they're
game,
still
but
coming
yeah,
off.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
hear what
yeah,
you say
yeah.
about that. But we weren't great at Caledonia either. And they're coming off that loss against Manchester on the road. And so he would have seen this as a test. And quite often, if you're a coach, you can't do what Sabonis did in this game every game.
Mm,
You can't be as you had a great shot of him on the sideline at times with the defensive slides and all that
mm,
stuff. You can't do that the whole time, because your team will tire of it, right? But you have to do it when you need it. Again, it's something from I once said to me, there's times I need to be a coach, there's times I need to be a cheerleader.
mm,
Other times I just need to go and play and get a rebound. But and in that game he needed to be a cheerleader, because by his demeanor he made sure that his team understood how important that game was
mm,
in his mind. So I was so that's different to the kind of different to Schmidt and Bozic, who did things in a different way. And you never could tell.
yeah.
It doesn't mean they weren't invested. I still remember Bozic last year at Newcastle, and when they got knocked out of the playoffs, and it was kind of a resigned kind of shoulder shrug. I could not see that from Sabonis ever.
No, no.
Now, I mean, I appreciate Bozic probably had a contract somewhere else by then, but but even so. You would never see that. So that made for a really good game. I thought the fact that London treated it that way gave Leicester so much respect was quite interesting. Um, and and Leicester came out, particularly the guards, obviously, ready to play. And if you've got talent and you're playing against a team that's just beaten Besiktas,
Mm.
then you're going to be ready to play.
Yeah, yeah.
And Carey and Battle came out really aggressive. But London had Reynolds,
Mm.
who became their Scott and McGusty, I
Mm.
thought. He
Yeah,
became
yeah.
the main guy.
Yeah.
And the game just went, the game was really interesting.
It did, yeah. It kind of stayed like the first quarter, to be honest with you. Leicester staying in the game, very carry and battle dependent, but staying in the game. And then Jonathan Williams had 8 in an 11-3 run to make it 51-60, and you were wondering if they were going to get away there. But then Battle continued to hit tough shots, and it was a 1 point game with 7 minutes to go.
Yeah, I mean, such as when you evenly rotate and you rotate as much as Sabonis does, um, I'm not talking about, both teams played 9 players, but Leicester's were kind of in a pattern, whereas
Mm.
London's are coming in and out.
Mm.
You get your third foul, you're out, next guy up. So when you do that, there are going to be lulls in the game. And I
Mm.
thought I was the same as you. I mean, I texted you after the first quarter saying, can anybody else score for Leicester? That's going to make the difference in the game. And you thought that at the end of the third quarter it was kind of done, but then the lineup London had on the court wasn't their closing lineup. Battle made another couple of tough shots, and suddenly it's a 2 point game. They've got a chance. Um, it's just a slight, unfortunately, there is. Let's see, unfortunately, um, Leicester were very. We've said it. They made 6 field goals outside of Battle and
Yeah,
Carey.
yeah,
Six of
yeah.
23. And and before I checked that stat, I actually went back in my head and played the game back in my head to see if I could remember how many there were,
Mm.
and I got them all.
Mm.
I got
Yeah,
one of them was loving in the first play when Robert called to play to get somebody else the ball, the
yeah, yeah.
first second
First
half.
play, yeah.
Then there was
Then he
loving
hit three a minute
here
later.
three off Carey's penetration, and then there was Baldwin Rafi got an offensive rebound on a miss on an air ball, which just happens. Sulaiman made one drive to his left where he got fouled. I think he made another drive down the baseline, and there was somebody else I can't remember, and that was it.
Mm.
Now, basically, when it came back to it, guys outside of Carey and Battle made one jump shot,
Yeah.
and that's why you don't have many assists because basically Leicester are being defended 2-on-2 in the pick and roll. London's guys are too long, and the two guys who are capable of scoring the ball at a real clip. I think Johnson made Johnson's underarm kind of oopsie do shot where he got fouled in the first quarter. That was the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
one, which was kind of a broken play as well. So that was it. So nobody else made a jump shot, which meant Leicester weren't creating good jump shots for every other team because they became so guard dominant. And ultimately, when, as you said in the third quarter, when Williams is getting dunk after dunk and Battle's making tough three after tough three, the shot differential was very, very difficult for Leicester to get over. There's a few, so yeah, I didn't pick a specific point in the game. I thought when Reynolds was in the game, they were a different team,
Mm.
better team. But I didn't pick a specific point in the game where I thought it was gone. Um, there was, I think, maybe one 3 point shot off a shot when they were down one, when Leicester were down one, and I think they gave up maybe a 3 point shot to Rye in the corner,
Yeah.
and that was a help off the strong side in the corner, and that wasn't good. He
Yeah.
shouldn't have given that shot up. That was maybe the point. It was a game that Leicester had to get in the lead,
Yeah.
because
And
London were.
the other thing is, it was 3 points with 5 minutes to go. London had a 10-2 run.
Yeah,
In that spell as well, they also missed 4 straight free throws,
yeah. Well,
which really sort of
it
killed them.
did,
And
but that's
then
the bigs.
Dean
I mean,
Williams hit a three to make it
yeah,
12.
yeah. I mean, yeah. People say, "Oh, you shouldn't miss foul shots." Yeah, but it's Menzies and Martin. They're the guys who London have done well to foul to put on the line. You don't give up dunks. What I will say is there was an obvious unsportsmanlike in the first half. I've just remembered it when Menzies
Yeah,
got
yeah,
from
yeah.
behind on by the
Yeah.
shoulders. I mean, how that's not caught, how that is not unsportsmanlike, given some of the other ones I've seen.
Yeah.
Anything that's half court, kind of a reach around the half court's an unsportsmanlike, but Menzies gets grabbed on the shoulder as he's trying to go up. And you're rewarding that by saying, "Oh, make two from the line." Not very good, I'm afraid. But Menzies and what's the best? Menzies and Martin. I mean, if they make 3 or 6, you're happy.
Mm.
So it's a good job by London putting them on the line and making them finish. And it gives Rob a problem because he needs the big guys in the game to counteract London's size. But it's tough to have them in the game if they can't make the foul shots.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, because you're playing at that point, you're playing possession by possession.
Mm,
Game's close, as you say. Three nil possessions of three good offenses resulting in fouls being gained, but no points come out of it. They
yeah.
score twice down the other end. It's a killer.
Mm,
But then again, that's the difference between London having X amount of money available for their bigs
mm,
and everybody else having Y amount of money available for their bigs.
mm,
Because the one thing that is clear from um, I think from this year is that it is very hard to find high level centres to play for the remuneration that is available to the vast majority of SLP clubs.
mm, mm,
Because the centres are in, it's not like finding somebody who's 6'6". You can find a Raekwon Battle,
mm,
or Eagles can find a Terrell Burden or whoever. You can find guys who can play or little, who can play at a certain level. Um, but finding somebody who's 6'9", 6'10",
mm,
you're not going to get Charles Thompson every year. You look at how well Dele Adekunle, Ade, Adelekin, sorry, Dame Adelekin, my fault.
mm,
Jesus. From Guildford last year, he's doing well abroad. Damon Robinson's gone abroad. Patrick Tappe from Caledonia a couple of years ago. Clifton Moore. These guys, you get them. You might if you hit one
mm,
at the right time, great. But you might get them for 6 months, okay? Because you can't pay the kind of the two, three times the price that a Euro Cup team can.
mm,
That's the reality of it. And I would be remiss to say a Euro Cup team which produced its accounts last year and last week and has had a 4.2 million pound loss.
mm,
So the playing field it isn't uneven, but it's bumpy at
mm,
best. And that, unfortunately, where does that show itself? That shows itself in Martin and on a very micro level
mm.
in Martin and Menzies going 0 of 6 in the fourth quarter of a tight game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you're a coach, you can't do anything about that. I mean,
No.
that's just the way of the world. Now, against that, it doesn't mean London are going to just because you've got players who are better paid and probably at a slightly higher kind of gradient level in the terms of European basketball, doesn't mean you're going to win. You still got to play hard. You still got to be coached. They
Mm,
got beat by Manchester by 18 at home.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so you still got to go there and make plays. I think that's where Rye really helps them because Rye plays every game like it's the same.
Yeah, yeah.
And Williams as well, really, really impressive. First play of the game comes off a
Dean
curl, just
Williams.
Dean Williams, yeah.
Yeah.
Just becomes off a player and just dunks it.
Mm,
And um, and then he's got this kind of game whereby he can play the three and the four, and he's the right size for either position.
mm,
So if he's a four, he can stretch it and shoot the ball from outside. And if he's a three, he just backs somebody down. He's confident in his game. So he's really grounded them and really helped them, I think, as well. The Americans, they're okay. They come and go.
mm,
But having Ryan Williams is really that positional size, 6'6", 6'9", at those positions. Nobody else in the league's got that.
mm,
And I thought Leicester gave it their best shot. I thought
mm.
it just probably I think anybody else they probably beat
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in that game, the way they played. Battle is just highest of high level. Rob's probably hoping he misses a few to see if he can knock his price down for next year. And Carey is what Carey is. He's a scorer. He's a scoring point guard. I mean, their subplot is, Evie's kind of been marginalized. He only played 8 minutes in this game. He's not kind of the guard that really helps against the size of London inside. And and so basically they had to go. They couldn't really go with a bench much. So Carey was back in being in the second quarter. So you've got to kind of find a way of getting something out of the bench because I think they had about 8 points off the bench or something.
Yeah, they're the lowest in the league in bench points.
You know, and it's tough because you look at the stats. Ultimately, Carey and Battle shot 60% of the shots,
Mm,
maybe 34 out of 57, something like that. I can't remember. They put a lot of shots up.
yeah, they did. Yeah, yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough for everybody else to get going in those circumstances. But then again, their shots are effective at halftime. They had 18 shots for 29 points,
Yeah.
and the other guys had like 11 shots for 5 points. So who do you want shooting it?
Mm,
Over 2 quarters, you can survive like that. It's very tough to survive like that over four.
mm. Battle was 6 of 11 for 3 for 30 points. Carey was 23 points and 4 assists. They both shot 50% from the floor. You mentioned it. The rest of the team, 22.6 of 23. And they also missed 9 free throws, Leicester, 19 of
And
28
that's
from the
it's not
free
on the
throw
rest
line.
of the team because you know if you're not touching the ball regularly and you're not getting the ball by in your attack positions, it's tough. You know, so
Mm.
it's not just on them. Um, but the thing with Battle is you just think every time he's shooting, it's going in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
From where or what kind of state, you know, when he rises up to shoot it, you know, he is not impacted by a defender.
Mm.
That's a hell of a skill. That's an NBA skill, you know, and he's able to do it off the move as well. So, yeah, big things ahead for him.
Reynolds, 14 points, 9 assists. Dean Williams, 14 points. Jonathan Williams, 12 points. Uh, Basically the same number of attempts from the floor, Leicester and London. London made 8 more of them. It's sometimes a simple game.
Yeah, well, it's a simple game because half of them are Williams
I
dunking,
don't.
don't they?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, going down the middle. Um, and yeah, it is. You know,
I think that was the biggest shot quality differential game I've seen this season.
yeah, I mean
To be
that's right.
fair.
But then again, you know, a high quality shot for Battle may not be a high quality shot for anybody else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know, and
yeah,
they're worth three.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, eight. So I mean, 18 points on 11 threes. You'll probably live with that because if Williams makes 11 dunks, he only gets 22 points.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
That's
know,
it.
so
Let's come to Sunday. Bristol flies 86, sorry, 89 as 87 after overtime. Lawrence was back for Surrey. Flyers could barely make a shot in the first quarter. They 30% from the floor. They did get 10 offensive rebounds, and Surrey only had 9 total rebounds in the quarter, but only 5 second chance points. And yet, despite all of that, they were ahead for the whole of the first quarter.
yeah, it was one of those. This appeared to be one of those games whereby at some point Bristol are going to make a ton of shots and Surrey aren't going to be able to follow, and it's going
Yeah,
to be a 15-point game, and that's going to be it.
yeah,
Sometimes you wonder if that mentality is kind of skewed by the league standings as opposed to what you're watching. You know,
yeah,
Bristol are 7-5, they're at home. You expect, oh, this is a game they're going to pull away
yeah,
from. They weren't really doing. They were a little bit out of sync. I mean, they had one of those kind of best described as madcap Cameron Holden games.
yeah, yeah.
I was watching it on the balcony at the Eagles game before the game with a couple of guys from the Eagles crew. I was just saying, Cameron Holden is all over this court for good and for bad.
Mm,
He kind of making plays, rebounding, getting pushed over, finishing, throwing the ball away, all this stuff. And I think it maybe threw them off a little bit. Also, I'm not sure if Joachim was ill or whether he was just a Christmas rookie or whatever, but he had no impact on this game compared
no.
to where he was, in October. And players are entitled to have games like that, but I thought it was pretty, you just don't remember seeing him in this game.
Mm,
So, and the problem is he's quite a pale fella, so you wouldn't really know whether he was ill or not. I'm sure someone in Bristol will tell us. So he didn't really have any impact, and that leaves them a little bit, it changes them a little bit because um, their strengths this year have been kind of based around the five out. Brody's really been relegated. He only played 9 minutes in this game. He was brought in as a starting centre.
mm,
Delpesh now coming off the bench before him. They've got two centres coming off the bench, which is kind of a clunky fit, but that's because McCormack is shooting like 53% from 3-point
yeah,
line.
leads the
The
league in
five,
three-point
so
shooting.
there's a reason that you want that lineup in the game, that smaller. But it does rely a little bit on Joachim because Joachim is the extra floor spacer, which you go along with Anderson and Joachim and the other Anderson and Holden. Holden becomes your Jack in the box. He's your trump card. You don't quite know what he's going to do. You can't get the ball. You throw it in the post. You give him the ball to him. So they were a little bit off, but teams can be a little bit off at Christmas in their shooting, etc. And so he just kind of hung around again. The beginning, Kuntz is beginning to look like a player. Beginning to, he's not there yet. But he's going through his preseason, so we'll see where he gets to. He's a major tipping point for that team.
Mm, mm,
Because if he knocks down shots and he becomes a capable defender, then that raises their ceiling substantially.
mm.
If he doesn't, then you fear for them because there's a lot on the guard. Lawrence played 6 minutes. I mean, so yeah, he played, but he didn't play much.
He was close to our 6:36. I think he was
Was he?
6:26.
I didn't.
Candy in your game is 6:38. I think it was.
How much? How
We had
quick
we
life?
we
How
had
quick?
three close ones this weekend.
How quickly I forget.
Yeah.
Oh man, Forrest Awake. I would have been rooting for the sub. But he came in at the end, didn't he, Candy? Yeah, so he only played 6 minutes 24, sorry.
Yeah.
And that leaves still a lot for Lily and Polite. But I thought Polite was excellent in this game.
Mm,
And I was kind of discussing the Eagles game with a couple of guys. I was just as the game was going on, I was discussing the differences and the merits and the demerits of a Polite against a Joe Anderson,
mm,
because they're so different in the way that they control the game. And Polite's a prober and he's looking to get to the rim, whereas Anderson's a guy that you kind of forget about, and then suddenly he's like a Nash-like kind of
mm,
dribbling, getting suddenly he's at a spot. He's for those who watch the NBA, he's like a TJ McConnell type.
mm,
Just gets to a spot and suddenly he's got 15 points. You're not quite sure how. Um, and I thought Polite took on every challenge in this game.
mm,
Really did. And they got some belief
mm.
in the third quarter. They started making plays and they went up. And then Lily got going and they had some belief.
Yeah, they scored 8 in a row late in the second quarter and then an 11-3 start to the third quarter to lead by 10, 42-52. They got 14 ahead with 11 minutes to go, but Flyers scored 10 unanswered to make it 60-64 a minute into the fourth quarter. And Surrey were still up 5 with 5 to play. I thought they got a little bit tight and didn't quite know where they were going to go to. It looked to me like they just were like, just keep giving it back to Polite or give it to
Yeah.
Lily and let one of them go and hope they can come up with something.
Well, they're a little bit susceptible, I think, to runs because, if they have four of their bench guys on court at the same time, offense is hard for them.
Mm,
Particularly with Lawrence not being there to quarterback them much. And I thought that kind of happened around the third quarter. Also, young guys are um, more susceptible to mistakes and to pressure. And you saw Lynn commit a silly unsportsmanlike foul in this game, where he kind of pushed out after the ball had gone, and which are momentum changing plays because he'd just been fouled, and so
mm,
instead of getting the ball back, the other team gets two shots on the ball. And Lloyd was he's kind of trying to find a fifth guy at the end,
mm,
basically. And Graham was in and out of the game at the end. Didn't have the commentary on, because I don't know if it was because he was in foul trouble or whatever. But so he was in and out of the game, and he ended up at one point playing without any of his bigs on the court, with kind of Small as the only big, quite
mm,
wonderfully. As they're small, and finding out, because that matches up with Bristol's five out. So at that point, you look on the bench, you've got Brody, you've got Del Pesh on Bristol's bench, you've got Ling, you've got Nwanko, and you've got Graham on Surrey's bench, who would be a big guy. You can't get to
mm,
play,
mm.
because that's the way, because teams are matching up with each other and trying to take away the outside shot. And yeah, they did get tight. But then again, then Joe Anderson missed three foul shots.
Well, we've still
Yeah,
got a ways to get to
yeah,
that first, but I was actually convinced that Flyers were going to steal it at the end, but in fact,
yeah,
both teams were turning it over and missing shots, and the last score was with 121 to go. The final play of regulation, Joe Anderson had a mismatch. I think Graham was on the court at that time. I think
yeah.
he was
He
guarding it,
was, yes, that's it.
and I think you just attack there. I know Surrey had a foul to give, so you could, but you might not get to the line. But I think you attack. He settled for a three, and he
He
missed it and
did,
went to
except
overtime.
I saw him nail one in the preseason against Newcastle. I saw
Mm,
him nail one from about 30 feet against Newcastle to put the game away with 45 seconds to go. And I think he's made another one, a similar type of shot, maybe in Europe this year.
mm.
But my memory is really fading on that one. So it's not a shot he's comfortable with. So he didn't kind of get to it. It was a little bit deeper than it normally is. He didn't rock Graham back on his heels,
Mm,
and I think if you're going to shoot that shot, it just didn't look like the shot that he would want to have shot.
mm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, at this point, there wasn't really any player on either of the teams you would say we're going to go to get a basket.
No,
Probably
no.
Lily was probably the one.
So in overtime, Kuntz tied the scores with two free throws with 2.5 minutes to go. Obviously, these are two of the worst free throw shooting teams in the league. So I was sitting there waiting for people to miss free throws and was justly rewarded in the end.
Yeah.
154 to go after Surrey missed two close ones at the basket. Lily hit from just inside the free throw line to put the Niners up 83-85. 144 to go. Delpesh had the ball knocked away out of bounds for an end line ball, and then Small just asleep on the inbound allows McCormack just to step to the basket and lay
He
it
is
in.
asleep, but again, his defense, he isn't used to defending a five spot
Mm.
in that action. You know, he's playing on the wing most of his career. I'm not saying he shouldn't, they shouldn't have executed the switch better or whatever, but that's not a role that's not something he would have been familiar with because normally that would be one of your bigs who's in there defending that play because it's McCormack is the five, and you're thinking about McCormack as a shooter. So that's the downside of kind of going smaller and playing guys out of their normal role because that won't be the reps he's got in practice in relation to defending that spot and it hurt them.
So it's 85-85. 129 to go. Polite turns the corner. That helps a little bit late, so he gets a layup 85-87. And then the bit you just foreshadowed a moment ago, 115 to go. Joe Anderson fouled on a 3-point shot, goes to the line and misses all three of them. Bearing in mind, in league play, he came into that game 16 of 18 from the free throw line. So he missed more shots on that one possession than he had in the
Yeah,
league
I
play
mean, the only
before.
mitigation is at that point he played 37 minutes.
Mm.
The London guards aren't playing 37 minutes in two games.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the economics of the thing. So he's been on court a lot in that game, primarily I think because Joachim was unimpactful.
Mm.
So he's played a lot of minutes, and sometimes that can catch up. Or it's
Uh,
just it's saying that he shouldn't miss in three.
no.
He'd be astounded that he missed three. It's inexplicable that he misses three. He's actually, if you ask me to name three guys in the league who've got the clutch gene this year, he would be one of them.
Mm.
So it was bizarre watching
Mm.
it, to be honest.
Yeah. Surrey then turned it over, 40.1 seconds. Anderson is fouled again by Polite, misses the first one, so he actually missed four in a row,
No,
and then made the second 86-87. And then down the other end, Surrey ran the clock, but then forgot to actually shoot the ball at the end of the clock and
oh man, I was watching this and I was
got
like, that was two
violation.
for one. They had to go,
Yeah.
I don't care. They Lily had the ball in an attack position and it's a young team and I get that. And I get that, you don't really want to be two for oneing it when you're up. You don't want to take a bad shot and let the other team run out when you've got the advantage. So the aim is to be conservative.
Mm.
Yeah. But if you got the ball with 36 seconds to go on the wing. The defense is on its heels. He has to, at that point, I'm not angry if he attacks. He's the best
Yeah.
offensive player, the best scorer,
I have a
and
theory, Dave, and I've never said it out loud before. I have a theory that players don't think about two for one at all in the way that they used to.
mm,
And I was trying to think why, and I just wonder if they don't play as much as they used to. No, I mean, even the generation after me, I think played more. I think kids these days grow up and it's about training and
yeah, reps.
reps and
Yeah.
all of that sort of working with a trainer or whatever, all of that sort of thing. Come off screen, make an elbow. Come off screen, make an elbow. Rather than just going up and down and playing games and learning
That might be
game
right.
situation.
We used to do loads of 5-minute games in
Mm,
practice,
mm,
to keep things close at the end, and with some dodgy foul calls and all sorts
mm,
of stuff, just to
yeah,
just to kind of indoctrinate mental toughness into players.
mm,
And decision making into players. I'm not sure it's got worse, but as a statistically biased coach stroke analyst, I do get frustrated probably more often watching games now than I used to in relation to kind of end of game decision making.
yeah. Because there was another
Um,
one. I think was it might have been the Newcastle game, like the third quarter or something.
mm,
Somebody had the ball in semi-transition. There's 38 seconds or something, and
yeah,
backed it out and ran it
no,
down. And it's like, well, all you're doing is making sure you get one shot and they get one shot. Whereas if
no.
you'd kept going, you'd get two shots, they get one shot.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful as a coach. You don't want to be giving them an absolute green light to chuck up any crap on the
Yeah,
base
yeah,
if
yeah,
you
yeah.
want. but then you're relying on you getting the 40 best players. But no, that frustrated me. Yeah, I did,
Mm,
and I get, I'm sure that we've been in situations in the past when I was there where our guys have done the same,
mm.
because you want to get a good shot because it's the last possession, so it matters more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But sometimes you've got your best chance, your
yeah, yeah,
semi-transition is your best chance,
yeah.
and I mean, I've heard,
Particularly how poor they'd been actually from about the 4 minute mark in regulation, maybe even the
yeah,
5 minute mark in regulation in the half court. They'd really struggled to score. They'd got a couple of little 15 footers and they got to the line a couple of times, but they'd turned it over more times than they'd
I'll
had
give you a
good
memory
shots.
story. Yeah, I'll give you a car. So I've just had one come back into my memory. So let's go back down Dave's memory travels again.
Mm,
We played a game at Guildford, in at Surrey Sports Park, probably towards the end of maybe 2015, maybe 16, maybe the year Leicester beat us, maybe the year before, I can't remember. And we were up, or maybe earlier than that, but we were up by one with 28 seconds left,
mm.
ball on the sideline. My view was, look, we run it down, we put the shot up. Even if it misses, it's the rim. This game is over.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. That was it. This was a view I espoused quite substantially on the coach on the way back, because
Mm,
much to the annoyance of my coach,
mm.
who was quite happy with the fact that Charles Smith popped out, caught the ball, and drained a three
Yeah,
wide open.
yeah, yeah.
I'm saying to Fab afterwards, that's not a good shot. And he's looking at me like I'm absolutely
Yeah, 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 yeah.
stark staring mad, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Which is, what do you mean? That's one of the greatest scores in history of the league, because wide open.
yeah,
He's standing on there. And of course, Charles makes it because that's what he did. And
yeah,
of course,
yeah,
he waves at the crowd and does all that stuff. And of course, we win.
yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, statistically thinking, oh, Jesus,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
obviously it's not the Jamal Kennedy shot down in
If he'd
the,
missed it on the shot clock buzzer, time would have expired by the time they
you
rebounded.
got
You
the
win the
ball, you'd have
game.
won the
Yeah,
game anyway.
yeah,
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 and that's the rest of it. But you have to deal with understanding
yeah.
of
Mm,
players. And
mm.
obviously, what Fab knew about Charles was that Charles is making that shot.
Yeah, yeah,
Anybody else probably maybe not, but Charles, you're not ever telling Charles not to shoot the ball in that situation. Because the moment that you interfere with a player's thinking, that can impact their
yeah, yeah, yeah,
success. So it was a real kind of, man, Fat was a bad one. No, it's not. Shut up. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
he went and sat 3 seats further down the bus.
yeah.
And of course, and he was right, and because we won. And so it really is quite delicate in relation to when you empower players and when you
Mm,
don't.
mm.
But just on that one, yeah, I was a little bit frustrated with Lily for backing it out. So I didn't think they got anything good on it. They didn't get anything good. They
They
just
didn't
put
get. They got a shot clock violation. They didn't.
yeah.
It was one of them where again they didn't look like they knew who wanted to shoot the ball, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
you want a killer. And at that point, it's Lily's your killer at that
Mm,
point. If Lily makes or misses a shot, I'll live with that,
mm.
because he's made some tough shots in that fourth quarter. And he's one of those guys who can make a shot, get into a spot after 9 dribbles. And you wonder, how the hell did he get there and how did he make that shot? And he still makes it.
Yeah,
And we've seen those types of players who are the ones who will then go and shush the crowd. Trey Moore was the obvious
yeah,
one. Who'll just make the guards who will just make a player come off screens, whether I shush the crowd. Hey, what are we worried about? I got the ball, we ain't
yeah,
losing.
yeah, yeah,
And they didn't have that, but Lily's a rookie, so that's
yeah.
why.
And then Anderson again settled for a deep three, which was short. Again, I'd want to be going to the rim, but then he might be thinking,
I thought at that point, I think he may have been a bit mentally frazzled at that
yeah,
point. You know, and as I said, it doesn't really. There's only so much time, and then this is kind of the juxtaposition between Polite and Anderson I was talking about.
mm,
Polite's ability to get to the rim as opposed to Anderson's savviness in getting into his spots to make his shot.
mm,
Which do you prefer? It depends on which one works, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah,
But they're entirely different. In that situation, you would probably prefer the Polite type. But then again, if Anderson knocks down the shot, that's fine. But he never got into a rhythm in that, and putting the ball back in the hands of the guy who's just missed 4 foul shots
mm,
and saying, "I'll go and make a 30-footer to win the game,"
yeah,
or
yeah.
putting it all on his shoulders. I mean, yeah, I mean that's isn't
Because I think it went out to Holden, and Holden just gave it
yeah.
straight back to him.
Right
I
back
was a
to it.
bit
I mean,
surprised
that's
Holden
a,
didn't at
and
all.
that's not a coaching thing. That's a player thing.
Mm,
But Holden's probably worried about being fouled. He's not a great foul shooter, and it just it means that they trust Anderson. And,
yeah,
and that it's clearly the leader of the team. And they clearly all respect him substantially. But sometimes the leader of the team can't be the guy who has to carry the team as well.
mm,
You need those other guys. And obviously, if he's a point guard, then he's a point guard who's basically a shooting point guard. He's not really a passing point guard. He does move the basketball and he runs the screen and roll well and he comes off things and he does manipulate the defense. But he's not a guy who's going to take two dribbles, get into the middle and fling it out for someone for a shot.
Mm,
Um, then you're relying on him making shots, and he's just missed four foul shots. He's
mm,
missed four foul shots in 2 minutes. He's missed two all season
mm,
before then. So where's his head?
mm.
You know, it's tough. So yeah, I mean, talked a lot about Bristol there, and it seems a bit unfair to complain about Surrey's failure to do a 2-for-1 when they've got a great win on the road.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean, so I'm not in any way seeking to minimize the importance of that win, but sorry, oh, I was just impressive. I thought Polite was just outstanding in the game.
Mm.
Just watching, just his kind of will to win, I thought was kind of carried the rest of them through at times, and they just adapted and they just made enough plays to win. So credit to them.
I got asked on Blue Sky actually about overtime winners for Niners slash Scorchers. That was the first overtime win for Surrey. They'd been 0-3 in the Niners era in overtime. They'd won the last overtime game they played as Scorchers, but had lost the previous seven. So they had a spell of winning
I don't think you're entitled to
going 1
call
and 10.
the Niners situation an era yet. I think they're
Well,
only
it's not an era. It's a sort of
yeah. They've
yeah,
had like 14 months, have we? I
yeah,
mean that's a Niners at London City Royals.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But a first win
That's
in
it. No,
overtime,
great win. Great
and
win.
I think two of the losses were both against Bristol at the back end of last season, if I
And they
remember
do
rightly as
show a
well.
stick-to-itiveness on the road. They do hang around the teams on the road. Even when they were getting beaten Newcastle by 18, I was there, and then they came back and they should have won that game. So they don't have any quit in them, which is a
Yeah,
big thing
it's funny
going.
because I obviously did their game in Manchester just before Christmas, and I thought actually down the stretch they played better in that game than they did in this game. It was
Yeah,
almost like chasing it was a more comfortable position than
yeah.
trying to hold off
Well,
Bristol.
you'll find that with a lot of teams.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
pressure is off. It's not going to win, so we don't think we're going to win. So let's just, and the other team gets tight. The pressure, the
yeah,
tempo goes on either side of the court.
yeah. Joe Anderson, 19 points, 8 of 22 shooting, 1 of 5 from the free throw line. Holden, 17 points, 12 rebound. McCormack, 16 points. They were 39% from the floor, 28% from three, and 13 of 26 from free throws. Rough
That's
shooting.
Bristol last year, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Bristol last season. It is,
yeah.
you only rewind 12 months.
Lily 20, Polite 8 of 10 for 18 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. Graham 16.7 of 10 shooting, 8 rebounds. They missed 11 free throws as well, to be fair, sorry.
Mm. Yeah.
Let's go to Newcastle.
Well,
Newcastle Eagles
2000
79.
2,700 people said, let's go to Newcastle, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
no, let's not.
Yeah. Newcastle Eagles 79, Caledonia Gladiators 87. Okafor was back for the Eagles. Fag Penley was back for the Gladiators. Holland's still out. We talked about Caledonia not having any leads recently. They got one early on in this game, but Eagles were soon on top 18-12 after 7 minutes with 10 points from Rayshon Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think Caledonia should be sending me a free haggis because I think I obviously wound up some of their players to play hard last week. I don't eat haggis, so don't know these guys don't. Um, I probably wouldn't recognize one. But I mean, where to start with this game? Yeah, the first quarter was up and down. Newcastle starting with a 2-point guard on the bench formation with Clark and Burton on the bench, with their wings on the court, and Taylor playing well, Taylor attacking and making and they were quite sharp. Caledonia getting to the rim, Rag playing with a degree of intent, benefiting from having Wright. But overall, up until kind of the end of the first quarter, you wouldn't have known where the game was going.
Mm,
And the next two quarters, from Newcastle's perspective, were basketball Armageddon.
mm.
They were
So Armageddon began with a 21-3 lead, a run to give them a 33-21 lead early in the second quarter.
yeah, I mean, the 18-12 becomes 21-21 at the end of the first quarter. That was kind of the nip and tuck of the game. You kind of got that. But at the beginning of the second quarter, Newcastle didn't score for about 4 minutes, but they look like they just met each other.
Mm.
That's probably the best way I can put it. And then to a certain degree, you bring in Okafor back. Burton's only played 3 games. Caledonia did a great job. Johnny did a great job mixing in some zones, which really
Yeah.
did Newcastle. I mean, a 3-2 zone, which may as well have been written in Sanskrit for all the
Yeah.
Eagles. Did what was going on. No one got to the corner. Then their inability, their inability on top of that, Newcastle's inability to defensive rebound throughout the whole game was against a solid rebounding team, but certainly not the London Lions. You
Mm.
know, was pretty despicable given that you've got a full crowd there and Christmas game and you're coming off a win. Of course, they're coming off a good win and they've had
Yeah.
Christmas. So,
Mm.
and they're looking at Caledonia, who are bottom of the league, have lost 7 in a row and have hardly been in the league for about 6 weeks.
Mm.
Of course, the difference with Caledonia is that they've got now their 2 centres who are now have played like 4 or 5 games. So they're a little bit more into it. And they have Ethan Wright, and Ethan Wright was best player on the on the court. Ethan Wright had 12 rebounds,
Mm.
right? Newcastle starting centre, Manny Canway had none.
Mm.
Yeah, Eagles out rebounded. I think Caledonia had 16 offensive rebounds. Newcastle had 24 defensive rebounds.
Mm.
That is not going to get it done
Mm.
against a good shooting team because you don't expect to be out rebounded by Caledonia.
Mm.
They just played harder. They played with more intensity. Um, they played with more understanding of their rules. And Newcastle in the second and the third quarter um, appeared almost asphyxiated by the pressure.
Mm.
And they played slower and more methodical. And the combinations that they had on court, because Burden started the third quarter, um, there is, as I say, there is some mitigation. There's a Christmas and there's the fact that there's some guys playing together who haven't played much together at all, and you bring in Okafor back as well. But you can't mitigate the lack of effort in
Mm.
relation to getting on the floor. One point in the first half, there was a ball diving on the floor, and the only Eagles guy on the floor was 41 years old.
Mm.
And they just got out hustled, and that's the bottom line. And whichever way you like it, they got out hustled and showed an on-court. You're looking for an on-court leader to step up and to make difference. And Taylor did a little bit in the fourth quarter. And
Mm.
obviously, what happened in the fourth quarter was Newcastle got loose and started coming back and put a bit of pressure on and changed the tempo of the game, which makes you think, well, why aren't they like that for most of the game? They got enough on the bench, enough players on the bench to be doing that. But I just thought that their offense was nowhere near where it needs to be. And Holland and Jack, who are two, sorry, Hammond and Jack, who are two, pretty capable 3-point shooters, were over 10.
Mm.
I mean, that's not far away from being unrecoverable.
Mm.
And at times, then Jack stopped shooting it. So great job by Caledonia. The bigs, Brian he knew his role. Brian's a guy who plays his role, and I quite liked what he gave them in this game. He gave them a little bit of physicality. Thought Newcastle's spacing offensively was pretty dire. There's times everyone's running around and they're all in the way. Um, and a lot of that is kind of different combinations of players. I think Mark is going to have to figure out who is um, find a way to get his talent on the court at the same time and try and kind of carve a second unit out of that because at the moment I'm not sure whether is it going to be Canway who's starting? Is it going to be Okafor who's starting? Is it going to be Jack and Hammond who are Jack and Hammond who are starting, or is Burden going to come in and start for one of them with Taylor? I think the only guy who's basically in the starting five is Long. From my perspective, everybody else you're looking at thinking, what have what is our role going to be? And I think that's a problem moving pieces. Against that, they played really well the week before. They had 95 on Leicester.
Yeah.
So, of course, they had less players.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's that less players, more player thing. And but you can't give up the amount of offensive rebounds and that they gave up and expect to come close. And they just got out hustled and out executed by a Caledonia team when Ramsey made those 2 threes in the middle of the third quarter, and then Wright stole the ball on the inbounds.
Mm.
And it was like,
Let me just run through the game for anybody who didn't see it. Eagles had it down to five, but seven in a row just before halftime and a 15-5 start to the third quarter, with Ragsdale scoring 15 points in that spell, including eight in a row, which you were just referring to in about 30, 40 seconds to make it 38-58. That was basically the game. As you say, Eagles down the stretch did make a little run of it, but there was a couple of plays in a row where I think it might have been seven or something. They'd missed, and then Caledonia got a rebound, and I think Ragsdale maybe hit a three, or Wright, somebody hit a three. And then on the next play, they got like four offensive rebounds.
yeah, the four
And just,
offensive
yeah.
rebounds thing. And you looked at them, and that's the unacceptable thing. As I say, they weren't Newcastle aren't small, right?
Mm,
Ethan Wright is probably the what 6'2".
mm,
If you're being kind, right? You're looking at Newcastle on the wing. You got Jack. You got the one thing. The thing that led you to be so to see how discombobulated Newcastle were was that yeah, they were putting up threes and they shot 10 or 35 from three. And I'm not particularly bothered about them putting up a lot of threes, but no one was crashing. So when the three went up, there was no one crashing in. You see Cheshire play, the threes are going up, everybody's crashing from the corners.
yeah, yeah. And
They're
the other
crashing.
thing is
They're
against the
attacking.
zone, it's even more
Yeah.
likely to get an offensive rebound against the
Well,
zone, right?
you got to make the right decisions to get the ball. You know what I mean? And to get the ball to the right spots against the zone, and they didn't.
Mm,
And I think they're going to have to figure out their combinations of player on the court, and who was best playing with whom. Because Ward Hibbert looked pretty good in warm up. That's probably the best news of the night for the Eagles.
mm,
So I don't imagine he's going to be out much longer, and he's going to need to play,
mm,
because he's the one who gives them a little bit of leadership. So, that's 10 players, and then Candy as well has done okay. So he's going to have to find, you can't just keep throwing 10 players out there and hoping they all mesh. You've got to
mm,
find, these are my starters, these are the guys, this is your role, this is your role.
mm,
Because otherwise, they're going to look like they did, which was kind of strangers. But against all of that, it's because Caledonia basically applied the pressure and they stuck their boot on the wound,
mm,
and they didn't let it up in the third quarter when I thought they might, and I thought Newcastle might pick up the pace. And Newcastle just played
mm,
so slowly offensively, so much movement not to get any advantage. You didn't know where they were actually, they didn't manage to move the bigs around. I think they're going to be it's an encouraging win for Caledonia. I'd like to know where that's been because I don't know I don't know maybe it's different watching it close up, but um, I saw physical competitiveness close up that I hadn't seen in some of the games this year on
yeah, yeah,
TV.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
Well, interestingly, I obviously saw them at Leicester a couple of weeks ago, and they were pretty competitive in that as well. They were had shot
physical. I mean, that was a game they didn't commit a
yeah,
foul in, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? That's
yeah,
what I'm saying. And in that game against Leicester, I never thought they were going to win. I don't think I don't think they've out rebounded anybody like that all season.
yeah, yeah. Probably not.
You
Yeah.
know, and that's what I'm talking about. And they got steals, and when the ball was on the ground, they came up with it.
Mm,
Every 50-50 play. And that's what they have to be. And that's kind of what I was calling out a little bit last
mm,
week.
mm,
Where they were kind of happy to be down 10, jogging up and down, making shots,
mm,
that type of thing. And in this game, they weren't. In this game, the pressure. Newcastle's mistake was basically um, allowing them to get the confidence of being ahead.
mm.
Because that's the team that needed that. And if you're coming up against that team, you will be saying, what we need to do is put our foot on your throat straight away. So
Yeah,
you think it's just another game.
yeah,
The Eagles weren't ready to do that. So, great win for Caledonia. Really tightens things up, makes things a little bit more interesting at the bottom. Caledonia and Surrey winning because suddenly everybody's looking over their shoulders again.
yeah, yeah. Taylor, 25 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. Jack, 14.6 rebounds. Burden, 13 points. You said 10 of 35 from 3. Ragsdale, 21. Delpesh, 12. Wright, 11 points, 12 rebounds. And Spielman, 11 points as well.
Yeah, I mean, and just for those who don't know, I mean, I'm delighted that Delpesh is back because
Mm,
all I heard about Delpesh when he was at Newcastle was what a great guy he was, what a good team guy he
mm,
was, you know, how well he meshed and how well he fitted everything. And for a big guy to kind of do a patella, which is a pretty
mm,
serious injury,
mm,
on a impact play, which it wasn't down in Bristol, and to be out in 9 months and to come back and play is brilliant.
mm.
And he played in this game like, you guys have got my job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
went to Canway. He went to Canway like, you guys got my job. He had 12
Mm,
points and 8 rebounds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know, Canway, young guy, probably didn't realize that was coming.
yeah,
Darius didn't play that much, so it wasn't so much Darius. But he, he just went at them. He
yeah,
did exactly what a pro player is meant to do, and it's those little motivations,
yeah.
because he's now had 3 or 4 games back, so he's ready. That impact games, and sometimes you have to look behind this, behind what you're actually seeing on the court for the
Yeah, yeah.
story as to why these things are happening, and that was one of them.
Let's go to the final game. Cheshire Phoenix 116, Manchester Basketball 90. Policelli was back for the Phoenix. Cheshire were quickly out to a 13-5 lead, and Max Jones had been called for an unsportsmanlike foul, and we'd barely played 2 minutes at that stage, and it had the writing was on the wall.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, of course, Manchester. Did they play since they beat London?
They played Surrey, didn't they?
They played Surrey and they beat Surrey as well.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
they're coming off 2 wins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'd won, was it 6 out of 7 all competitions or something? And the only one they'd
But
lost was the overtime game at Leicester, where they probably should
which
have
it
won
didn't
that
matter.
game as
Didn't
well. Yeah,
matter
it
anyway.
didn't matter, but they probably should have won.
So 6 out of 7.
Yeah,
Hello, happy
yeah,
Christmas.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
How
yeah.
many times have and how many times have they played in the league already this season? Twice. How many
Twice. Yeah,
times have Manchester won? Twice.
twice.
Right? This has got trap game written literally all.
Mm,
It's got Cheshire Blue written all over it.
mm.
From beforehand. Um, and yeah, Jones. mm, he's top 5. He's in the top 5 hotheads. I'm afraid
Yeah,
this year. He's one of those guys who can channel it,
yeah,
hymns, and be really really good. But he's only one step away from unchanneling it.
yeah,
If you know
yeah.
what I mean.
I'll be honest with you. Uh, I think it might have been after the unsportsmanlike. It was certainly in the first quarter. He was walking off to the bench and he said something to the referee, and I thought, oh,
He's
that was
lucky.
a bit close to the mark. Then he sat down and he used the word that abbreviates to BS very loudly that I could hear through my headphones, despite listening to the director and all of that.
Is that after the
That
sportsman?
that was, yeah. I can't remember if it was exactly after the unsportsmanlike or a little bit later on in the
Well,
quarter.
there was one play. This is the thing. This is the thing about Rideau, right? And I know I always come back to Rideau with
Yeah,
Cheshire, but I like there's so much I like watching about Rideau because I'm figuring out what's going on all the time, right?
yeah,
And Rideau's he has a lot of skill. So I'm not just saying it's his only skill. It's not,
yeah,
but he has a masterful talent for maintaining his composure whilst manipulating other people's
yeah,
mentality,
yeah, yeah,
right? And in this game, and also, and just out of nothing. So in this game, there's a moment I think in the first quarter, where in front of Ben Thomas, Rideau's just running down the court, and Jones is there, and Rideau creates contact with Jones. Jones has just stood there, right? The ball's down that side as well, so it's close to the action, but he's not got the ball.
yeah,
So he's just kind of running down the court. But he deliberately runs it, and he's a strong guy. So
yeah,
he puts a little bit of a shoulder and not enough whereby you think, whatever. And I think and Rideau then kind of rebounds off to the left and falls
yeah,
down, and Jones
yeah,
falls, right? And the ref calls nothing because the ref's probably not watching it because
yeah,
we know we know where we're at with the refs, right? It calls nothing. And I think that's what wound Jones up. So I think when Jones is saying things like BS and stuff like that,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think it's Rideau has got into his head, and
yeah,
Rideau was head by Jones. Jones was it an offensive foul by Rideau? Probably not, but it was close.
yeah,
It was one where if a big guy's running down the court and runs into somebody like that, it could be
yeah,
called.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
there wasn't kind of quite enough there. But it was an unnecessary contact that Rideau deliberately made, and you're not telling me it's a coincidence he made it with Jones,
yeah,
right? So he's not agitated, provocateur, and he does it incredibly well. So that then gets his mind ticking, Jones's mind ticking. And I mean, he can't argue the unsportsmanlike. It's clear as day.
yeah, yeah,
Two
yeah,
hands
yeah,
around, you can't argue that. But
yeah,
at that point, it's not it's everything else that's going on. So again, and on top of that, you've got Cheshire coming out with I mean, Cheshire are stylistically so fascinating now to watch. I
mm,
really in um because I'm watching them as a coach, thinking, how am I going to counteract this? Right? Because
mm,
this is what why they're stylistically so interesting. They don't set screens. right? Skylar occasionally might whiff a screen and run past the screen to get to
Yeah.
to try and have his man confused so he can get an open shot. And they know if they link it to Skylar straight away. Zone are the same. So they make what they call ghost screens, whereby they pretend to set a screen and then
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Rideau and Robinson really don't want the screen. Occasionally, Robinson gets one from the wing and goes to his left. But basically, they're happy going one on one.
Yeah.
They're happy going one on one because they know that there is nobody else in the middle ever, right? So when the bigs do set screens, and I say they hardly do it, they don't roll down the middle like every other team,
Yeah.
ever. Because Cheshire do not want a guy in the middle, a big guy helping out in the middle. They want their guards to be able to attack one on one, right? So then you give up either Robinson, Rideau going to the rim, and what Robinson and Rideau are both very, very good at is understanding if any help is sent and firing the ball out to where the shooters are going to be because they know where they're going to be.
Yeah.
Right? So whereas every other team in the league is basically setting is all ball screen based to the point whereby it can get a little bit repetitive. Cheshire actually are eschewing the ball screens altogether. And they're saying we don't need them, right? And the only and anybody who catches the ball, after it's been in the paint, they better shoot it.
Yeah.
Their job is to shoot it, and they know their job is to shoot it, right? So Manchester tried various things in this game. They tried Nicholson in and basically giving up the shots in the corner to Lindo when Nicholson's in the game to block the middle off. They tried defending. They didn't start with Nicholson because they started small. Shelton didn't get in the game, which kind of surprised me because he's normally kind of effective down in Cheshire. But there was no way that they were able to ultimately impact the way that Cheshire's offense worked. And there was two reasons for that. One, Robinson had 27 points on 13 shots.
Yeah.
They could not guard him one on one. And the only way you can guard, they are like the old Milton Keynes teams with more shooting. They're like Vince's teams 15 years ago with Demarius Bowles, all those guys. They have Terrell Brown, they have four guards on the court, and Vince would basically find out whichever one was guarding, whoever was guarded by the weakest defender, you get the ball and you attack. Right? That's what he was. Bridgie got fed up with those teams. It was always him, unfairly. But it was so that's what they do, and they will, and they sprinkle into that the big guys who pop for threes, and the no conscience catch and shoot guys. That's Bocelli, Brenchley, and Cameron, and basically everybody. But most importantly, if you go back through that game, Dan, right? And maybe I didn't watch the last 3 or 4 minutes because it was done. I didn't watch it as carefully as I could have. I remember them shooting one mid-range jump shot. That was Skylar on the turnaround in the post. And occasionally they run the odd post up. Teams are switching on Skylar. They give Skylar the ball in the post and he's allowed to shoot a post up.
Yeah.
One mid-range shot the whole game. Because whenever they get in the paint, it's either going to the rim or it's being kicked out for a three. And that isn't chance. That is the way, that is an absolute commitment to a style of basketball, which we've talked about is probably more successful style at home than it is on the road when you've got more control of the environment and you're more aware of the rings and just the whole facility, whole idea. But it is fast because you have to be so disciplined defensively and then you have to get the rebound because the final thing is they all crash. Whenever that shot goes up, they all crash and they're physically quite an imposing team. They just did a number of Manchester. Manchester tried numerous different ways to kind of deal with it. But then they got sucked in.
Yeah.
And they got sucked into Cheshire's basketball when you're down 15. And the problem is Cheshire do leave you some easy points out there if you go quick. So it's very difficult not to ask a player to take them.
Yeah.
Controlling tempo at the effect of giving up good shots. You don't really want to do that. You want to take the good shots. You want to take those cheap layups you get. But then, boom, that means you're just playing right into their hands again. So it's and they're going back down the other end, and threes are going to, But some of those guys can shoot as well. Let's give them some credit. They are. I mean, Diggins is making turnarounds in the corner and stuff like that. They're not an easy team to guard at all. I'm interested to see what teams do. I mean, they've got 2 games against Newcastle at the weekend. And Newcastle are generally one of the better defensive scouting teams and are probably more suited to switching things and playing small than most teams because they don't get much out of the centers anyway. But I'll be interested to see if teams start maybe throwing a bit of zone at them. Because if you throw
Mm.
a zone at them, you're making them make more unnatural passes. And you might have a big guy in the middle all the time, so you take away that all that space in the middle. But then you got a rebound.
Yeah, you got a
You
rebound.
know, so I don't know. They are stylistically an absolute riddle wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in a
Mm.
matrix, wrapped in a
Yeah,
puzzle. That
yeah,
somebody's gonna have to figure out, or you're just gonna play games on their terms. If you play games on their terms, and 70% of the time they're gonna win,
yeah,
probably
yeah.
more at home. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, but Manchester,
So
you got to give Manchester a game. I mean, if they're going to lose a
yeah,
game, they can lose at Cheshire after Christmas, having won 6 or 7, having already beaten
yeah,
Cheshire, having
yeah.
their main firecracker. He managed to get himself thrown out of the game for a ridiculous technical because he threw the ball away from Paul
Yeah, yeah.
Wall.
So middle of the second quarter, Cameron had seven in a run of 12 points that took it to 49-28. During which time Jones got a technical for throwing the ball away. That was his game over, and to be honest, that was the game over as well. There
Yeah.
was no real response after that. It's just a question of how many Cheshire could get to, and 116 is the most anybody scored this season.
Wasn't
Robinson, yeah,
I just thought it wasn't that Manchester didn't try stuff because they did. They
yeah,
tried
yeah.
different looks, but ultimately you have to be on it, and they weren't really on it.
Mm,
And and whatever people, Jones getting himself thrown out like that, that has to have an impact
mm,
on everybody else because that's an issue that the coach has now got to address in the locker room.
mm,
He's got to be saying, you are what if you want to be one of our main guys, this cannot happen. You committed two ridiculous fouls or one ridiculous unsportsmanlike, or one ridiculous technical,
mm,
and which you can have no complaints about, and you managed to remove yourself from the game. You want to be a guy that the team's looking at him thinking, can we rely on him now? Is he the guy? Is he going to be there every time? And generally those things are building up over a period of time. So it kind of creates a few more issues for them. I do like them though. I think um, they've got a lot going on. They benefit from having a couple less players. I think having one less guy in Henry being injured. I think no matter who got injured, I think it would have been helping to have one less guy, to be honest,
mm.
because it means everybody else gets to play a bit more.
Robinson, 11 of 13 for 27 points. Cameron, 7 of 11 for 21 points and 8 rebounds. Brenchley, 18 points and 6 assists. They were 17 of 38 from three. Shot over 50% from the field goals, and still got 18 offensive rebounds.
And that's the thing. I mean, that's an ultimate. If you're picking out, if you're picking a stat sheet up at the end of the game, as a coach, you want to have an idea at the end of the game what the stat sheet's going to look like: minutes, points, shot attempts, and rebounding. That thing, that's pretty much what you want.
Yeah,
If you
yeah, it's
that
perfection,
job
isn't it,
done.
really? Yeah,
That's
yeah,
my stat sheet. I'll carry that stat sheet around with me.
yeah. Smith, 19 points. Added to Cassie, 15 points. Johnson, 12 points and 13 assists. Let's have a quick look at the table then. Lions 11 and 2 in first place. Cheshire now up to second with 9 wins and 7 defeats. Bristol dropped to third at 8 and 6. Manchester and Sheffield are both 7 and 5. Leicester 5 and 7. Newcastle 5 and 8. Surrey 4 and 7. And then Caledonia outside of the playoff line 3 and 12.
It's not good though that one team like Cheshire's played 16 games and Surrey's played 11.
Mm,
I mean, it's Christmas. We played off we shouldn't be at kind of 5 game gaps between teams. There's been no extra competitions thrown in other than one game in the cup between Surrey and Caledonia.
mm.
That's not, that's, yeah, I think it skews things. I just think I think it skews things a little bit. You wouldn't be having that in the rugby or the cricket or the Premier League or the football. No, not 5 games. Um, so yeah, because it still means you still don't have a real. Sorry, could win 5 games in a row. It could be 9 and 7.
Yeah, yeah.
You could be second in the league. You don't have still a realistic appraisal of the pecking order
Mm,
with everybody else. Um, Albeit it's tough because it's recency bias, isn't it?
mm,
After last week, I would say Newcastle and Manchester were pretty mobile.
mm.
After this week, I would say Newcastle and Manchester are in crisis.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean Cheshire, and Cheshire lost that game against Leicester, and now they've come out and now you think, well, my God, who can possibly beat them?
Mm.
So outside of London and the depth, it's still pretty much all up in the air.
Mm,
And what I will say is that the margins for coaching, the margins for kind of coaching decisions are getting less. You need to have the right players in the right game at the right time
mm,
because when games are close, the people will say you lose by 10, you lose by 15, you blame the players, you lose by one, you blame the coach.
mm,
You know, and so it'll be interesting, always interesting, but particularly interesting this year in kind of the dog days of January and February,
mm,
when things do get, players start getting ready for home and just away from and looking at what's happening next year because they're all basically out of contract in May and lots of other things creep in as to who is able to kind of stay together and which coaches are able to establish, these are my guys.
mm.
Because every team now is basically deep enough to play 9 or 10 players.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And you can't play nine unless you're London. London play nine. And by the way, about London, I love the bit at the end when Sabonis went a Goodwin for turning the ball over twice.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
remember, Goodwin came in 40 seconds to go, 11-point game, and came in like he was literally a stroll in the park and got trapped at half court and turned it over, and then nearly turned it over again. And Sabonis went at him afterwards. I was waiting for it to happen actually because I was watching it, and he just went at him, and that shows an investment in him. That he's not just it's just a young he wants him to be ready whatever the time
Mm,
as a young player. That's a lesson you've got to learn, and so, but at the end of the day, London only played 9 players in that game, and Leicester only played 9. But everybody's got 9 or 10 players they can play, and 9 or 10 players are not, unless you're London, that depth isn't going to win you games.
mm.
What's going to win you games is how much you get out of your best six,
Yeah, yeah,
and how well the others accept the role, and how what you get. And yeah, role players are important, but it's not going to be equal opportunity. The
mm,
reason for that, for people who don't know, is that London's guys are all getting paid about 3 times minimally, guesstimate, because the Eurocup players, and that's what the Eurocup um, price point is, a substantial amount more.
mm,
So they're all, so there's less of a differentiation in quality between the top and the bottom of their roster than there
mm,
is anywhere else. They can
mm.
afford to pay their ninth, 10th, 11th, 16th guy. And by the way, that was the longest bench in history
They were getting extra chairs out to be
I mean,
fair.
that's ridiculous. I mean, you should be selling tickets to them. And you could keep that out of bankruptcy. Well, could have done 15 years ago. Can you
Yeah,
imagine?
yeah,
You
yeah,
wouldn't be hiring buckets around. You'd be bringing, you'd be taxing the London
yeah.
support staff. Um, so yeah, but for everybody else, the difference between 1 and 10 is going to be substantial, or it's going to be bigger. And ultimately, only one guy can shoot the ball anytime down.
Mm,
So who do you want taking those shots, and who is it guy? Who is your where's your pecking order going to be within a team? That matters. It matters an enormous amount. And that's for the coaches to kind of juggle the egos and juggle the skill sets of the players. And that's why teams that are still integrating players are a little bit behind because they haven't all figured each other out yet.
mm,
Against that, teams who haven't integrated any players, they can get a little bit flat. So what you
mm,
saw at Bristol was a little in Bristol, and we've seen Surrey a couple of times, they're a little bit flat because they've still got the same guys, so they're going through the grind. Caledonia, they're looking right, oh, hang on a minute, I got 2 new centres, both of whom are interested in playing defence,
mm,
and Ethan Wright back. It's like having a new team.
mm,
Toto's playing 9 minutes instead of 29 minutes.
mm,
Everybody's back to their role. So they're now on an upswing because of the energy in that group. That group is on the upswing because they're thinking, actually, we've been through the worst. So yeah, the psychology of it all continues to fascinate me, as you can
mm.
probably tell.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
probably all of this probably means absolutely nothing at all. Probably at this point, any of the coaches who are daft enough to watch this are probably, and I've probably
Would
got
have switched off by
nine of them throwing things at the computer. He doesn't have a clue what he's talking about, and that might be right.
now.
But trying to figure it out is the fun bit,
Yeah, yeah.
I think, anyway. And for those of us who are that way inclined,
Uh,
anyway.
well, we'll be back next week to try and figure it all out again, see what happens. We'll obviously know the trophy finalists because both semi-finals are
Oh, no,
next
about
weekend.
that, I mean, part of me now, as a fan, I'm desperate for Newcastle to beat Cheshire.
Mm.
As a spectator, I'm waiting for Rideau versus Philip
Yeah,
rumbling
yeah, Yeah,
London v
yeah,
Cheshire repeat from no fans 2 years ago.
yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I'm waiting for.
yeah,
So it could either be last year's final or 2 years ago's final.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Or
Bristol v
neither.
Newcastle, London v Cheshire. I mean, you'd probably say London v Cheshire is odds on at the moment of what we've seen
Yeah,
this. Then again, what we'd seen last week, maybe not. So,
yeah, yeah,
who knows? It's gonna be. I mean, I think it's gonna be tough for Newcastle to win a second leg in Ellesmere Port. I think
yeah,
that's a tough place to go, and because no lead will be safe,
yeah, yeah.
in the way that they play, and I'm not sure that the Eagles are quite together enough. I don't, with Okafor just coming back, with Burden just coming in. It's a couple of extra pieces to add to your group. I'm not sure. I think that might come a little bit early for them. But they've got another game on tomorrow night in Surrey to sort that out. Whereas they're obviously all together because they've had the same group all season. And London v Bristol, it's just a ridiculous thing that they're playing each other, haven't played each other in the group. Um, it's difficult to see London not winning those games if Sabonis really wants to win them.
Mm,
I'm sure he does. Haven't
yeah,
seen him in Leicester.
I am
Yeah.
as
And
well.
I'm quite sure that Tariq Phillip will want to win that game.
Yeah, definitely.
And then be looking at his phone and see what the score is.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we have to, guys. If you want to know more, go back 2 years.
yeah, you have to go back.
We don't cater for part-time viewers. Yeah, if you want to know the story, deal with it. Go back and listen to the whole back catalogue. I'll see you in 3 weeks when you
Yeah.
come out of the darkened room. You apply to the local mental health asylum.
So on that, on that cheery note, have a great New Year, everybody. And
I
Dave
meant
and
to say
I
all
will
our
be,
listeners were mental patients.
yeah, Dave and I will be back in 2026 to kick it all off again. But for now, goodbye.